middle of Siman Chav Beis. So we already had a few classes on the Siman, and so far what we've seen is the Alter Rebbe is telling us the Chassidim were coming to the Alter Rebbe, and they're coming in Iggeres, and they were unloading to the Alter Rebbe all of their burdens and asking for advice in material matters. And the Alter Rebbe says, you don't do that. The only one who can give advice in material matters is a Navi. And this is as we spoke in the last few weeks, this is a very strongly worded rebuke to the Chassidim, not to waste his time with these questions about business deals and yet to do or not to do, or questions about health matters. And because he says this is the purview of Nevi'im. Now, as we've mentioned the last few classes every single time, Chassidim did not listen to the Alter Rebbe. They continued in asking advice from the Alter Rebbe. I was actually just this week reading a letter, and this has also been the practice of Chassidim ever since. So I work for an organization called the JLI, Jewish Learning Institute, and the one who's director is a Yid. His name is Rabbi Mintz. His uncle passed away probably a year ago, 2 years ago. His name is David Mintz, and David Mintz is famous that he was the founder and creator and owner of Tofudi ice cream company.
Oh, Tofudi.
Yeah.
Isaac Mintz was good.
Mintz.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, David Mintz was his name. So this David Mintz tells his story about how he was in business, and he was trying to make ice cream, and it wasn't working, and he asked the Rebbe what to do, and the Rebbe told him, "You keep on it, because you want to do something else." He had given up, and he was ready to go into another area, and the Rebbe said, "Absolutely not." And you keep on going, and shortly thereafter, he had his breakthrough, and he came up with the formula that was necessary, and to start a very successful company. Now the question is, how did the Rebbe know this? And this is something which Chassidim have been doing all along, asking the Rebbe.
Yeah, have these cell phones. It's a little small button.
Asking the Rebbe's questions, even in material matters. But the Poil, as we discussed in the previous weeks, why it is that the Chassidim disregarded what the Alter Rebbe said. So the Alter Rebbe concludes, and he says, instead of asking Eitzas Merachik, instead of asking these questions, he says instead you should return to Hashem beruach nemucha v'achnos aguf. This is 6 lines on the top of the page, with a humble spirit, humility, lekabel techachte ba'ava, to accept Hashem's rebuke with love, with the understanding that the one who Hashem loves, He rebukes. So the Rebbe is telling us, instead of coming to me and complaining about your tzaras and asking for advice, and I don't have the answers anyways, the Alter Rebbe is saying. Instead, the Alter Rebbe is saying, you have to learn to accept Hashem's rebuke, understanding that it comes from a place of love from Hashem. And the Alter Rebbe now is going to expand on this idea. And let's continue inside.
Where are we?
Page 268 by the new paragraph.
That's why Hashem shows His tough love, right? Hashem can do that, right? Love of suffering and things going wrong and everything and stuff. The message from Hashem, right? And Hashem is showing. He loves us and He's showing it in a tough way. It's tough love. We don't know why that is.
We're going to find out. Well, we're going to learn all about this.
About why tough love is.
Yes. Rahman. The Rebbe says, imagine a compassionate father, Chacham. He's a wise person, a tzaddik, and a righteous person. Hamake benoi, who has the need to hit his child. She'ein leven chacham lahapich oiref. A wise son is not going to turn his face away, lanus, and try to escape, limtzele Ezra, or to try to find someone to help him. Afilu meilus yesher, even to find someone who will intercede lefnei aviv, before his father, Harachman, who is compassionate, v'atzadik, and righteous, the chassid, and is kind. Rak rather, li'is yashar yechzei panimai, a wise son will look at his father face to face, im aviv panim bepanim, Lispel HaKodesh be'ava, and to tolerate and to accept the hits with love. L'toiv le'kol hayamim, and this was something which will benefit him for his entire life. Okay, so obviously the Rebbe, the Nimshal is going to be, and the same thing is also when the Eibishter gives us patch, when the Eibishter gives us a patch, we're not supposed to try to run away from it. We're not supposed to try to find a way to help ourselves or save ourselves or someone even to intercede on our behalf, but rather we should be mekabel it ba'av.
When he wrote it down, how long ago?
This letter was written in the 1790s.
Okay, nowadays, the new generation, if the father will come to hit him, they will hit back the father.
That is true.
That time maybe you can say that.
Maybe the new generation isn't so wise, but we really have to discuss this and figure out what the Alter Rebbe means and try to go a little deeper, and maybe some of the questions will be answered. Yes?
But people go to a Rebbe or to a Chacham to...
That is correct.
For
a Brahma.
intercession.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
So
I have a feeling that Alter Rebbe was aware of this, and he wrote it nevertheless. So we need to understand what Alter Rebbe is saying. We need to understand what he means. We have to know how to understand how to reconcile this. I mean, you're saying that Rabbi, there's also the idea that we daven to Hashem. We say Hashem, please take away from us all the tzaras. So even before that, how do you reconcile that? Okay, we have to talk about this. But before we do this, let's talk about the simple understanding of what Alter Rebbe is saying over here. So the first thing is that Alter Rebbe is talking about a father who spanks his son, a father who hits his child as a disciplinary measure. Now this is something which in today's day and age, as Sasson already has said, it's not something which is considered to be socially acceptable to hit children. And to be very clear, I am not going to be for or against hitting children over here. I want to talk about it in a little more of a deeper way to give context over here to what the Alter Rebbe is talking about.
But it says Chosech benos and ebno.
That's correct. Correct. And to give a little context over here, I'd like to tell you a story. There's a Yid, I actually believe he lived in Flatbush, and his name was Label Zisman. He passed away a few years ago. And this Label Zisman, anyway, you know who he was?
Yeah.
Okay. So he used to come here to the shul, you're saying?
No, his brother came to the shul, Beryl.
His brother Beryl. Brother Beryl ended up in Florida eventually. Brother Beryl also passed away a few years ago.
But he later moved to the Five Towns.
Oh, right, that's really the 5 towns. Correct. Okay. So this label had a brother Beryl, and they both grew up in the city of Kovna, which I believe is in Lithuania. And their father was a Lubavitcher. The father's name was Feivel. So this story I'm saying is a book he wrote a book. This label Zisman wrote a book called I Believe, all about his experiences before the Holocaust, during the Holocaust, after the Holocaust. A fascinating book. So the story that I'm going to say I read over there. So his father was a wealthy member of the Jewish community in Kovna, a Lubavitcher. By the way, there weren't many Lubavitchers in Kovna. That wasn't a Lubavitcher community, but he was one of the. Yeah, it was a Litvish community, but he was one of the few.
About the Holocaust, does Hashem make it happen or let it happen?
We're not there now. So that's not directly addressing what we're talking about. It's a great question, but it's not.
I know it is.
So. Some of you might be familiar with, I I actually knew the brother Beryl. I knew the Beryl when I grew up. He lived in East Flatbush, and my grandparents lived in East Flatbush. I davened in Lubavitcher Shtibel over there, and he davened there also. And he would talk about he remembers how seeing the Frierdiker Rebbe right before the Holocaust, and the Frierdiker gave him a bracha. During the Holocaust, there was in the city of Kovna, there was a Rav, his name was Rabbi Ephraim Oshry. He's not around still, right? What?
The east side, he was
Right.
Oshry.
Now he wasn't the main Rav in the city. The main Rav was I think his name was Rabbi Shapiro. Wasn't it?
The Kovner Rav. He wrote Shuvas about the Holocaust.
Right. So he wrote Shuvas about the Holocaust. During the Holocaust, he got a lot of questions from many different people, many different questions, and he gave answers to them. I mean, the answers almost always, obviously, were he was being makel. It was almost always questions of pikuach nefesh. Many fascinating questions. Then after the war, he survived the war, And after the war, he had buried the Chuvas, and afterwards he went, he found them, and he published them. He published them in a set of farm called Shiloh's Chuvas Mimamakim, which is fascinating and also heart-wrenching, the questions that he got. I believe also a selection of them were published in English. Not I believe, I know, many years ago I saw a book in English. I think it's called Responsa from the Holocaust, Responsa from the Depths. I don't remember, but it was written by him. And actually, as a child, I read this when I was probably, 12 years old, browsing the library at my father's shul. I bumped into this book in English. And I remember, one of the things I remember over there was that he wrote, one of the questions he got was about shaving with a razor. Apparently, they didn't have, many of the men didn't have any other way to shave other than with a razor. And at that point, having a beard was a sakana. Sakana. The Nazis, they saw someone with a beard, they took special joy and pleasure in tormenting such a person. So the question was, if a person doesn't have any other means available, can they shave with a razor? And the answer obviously was yes. He answered yes. And he writes over there, he says, however, there were two Yidden in Kovna who didn't shave. Well, they kept their beard. One of them was the Rav of Kovna. And he says that it didn't make a difference. The Nazis knew exactly who he was, and they knew who he was and where he was, and with a beard, without a beard, it wouldn't make a difference. This Rav died. He wasn't killed, if I remember correctly. He died in the ghetto. I forget his name. His name was Shapiro, maybe. The Rav of Kovna. And he says the other one was a simple Lubavitcher Balabas, a simple Lubavitcher Chassid who absolutely refused to shave his beard, no matter what. And then a few years later, when I was talking, I met this Beryl Zisman, and he was talking about his father, and he mentioned that his father didn't shave his beard, and I said, oh, that's the one that Rabbi was writing about. I said, yeah, my father was one that Rabbi was writing about. He was the one who, even during the Holocaust, he refused to shave his beard. He did not. The father did not survive. But the two sons survived. This Beryl and this Label Zisman, they both survived. And this Label especially, he had a very wild spirit. He was a little of a free spirit, and it helped him during the Holocaust. It helped him survive. He wasn't a conformist, so to say. We would call today maybe a wildekind, right? A little of a wild child. So he writes in his book, and he's writing about before the Holocaust. He says that one time, before the Holocaust, he's walking down the main street of the city, the main Jewish thoroughfare, basically 13th Avenue of Kovna. And next to him there were stores, and the stores had windows that were like at street levels, the windows I guess to the basement. And he gave one of them a kick, one of the windows, and the window broke. And he was like, wow, that was so cool, and it sounded so nice, such a nice tinkling sound. So he walked down the street and kicking all the windows, and he broke all the windows in the street. Meanwhile, someone went running to his father, who was sitting in the base medrash, and tells him there's a little redhead kid running around breaking the windows. Father knew exactly who it was right away. And the father came and got him, and his father told him, I want you to know, what you did is a terrible thing, going and destroying other people's properties, and you need to be punished for this. But I can't punish you now, because I'm too angry at you. And I can't punish out of anger. And that was that. 2 days later, his father called him over and said, I'm not angry at you anymore. And he called him over and he gave him a patch. That's a story that he writes. And whenever I think about the question, patching kids or not patching kids, that story always comes to mind as someone he wrote, but this book he wrote was, 60 years later, 70 years later, he still remembered that patch. But he remembered the patch, not in a negative way, in a negative light. He actually had a positive memory of the patch. And he realized how that patch came from a place not of anger, not that the father lost his temper, lost control. It wasn't that the father was in a place of, wasn't a control, issue of control. It was simply came from a place of the father's need to and recognition that the child needs to be disciplined for what they have done. And when it comes to hitting children, the whole discussion about hitting children in a way is misguided. The reason why is because it really doesn't make a big difference how you discipline your child. I'm sorry, it really doesn't make a difference what kind of method you use to discipline your child. It's what your temperament is at the time. What's your motivation? Why are you doing it? You can say, "Oh, I'm a great parent. I never hit my kid." Okay, but when my kid got me angry, what did I do? I screamed at him, I humiliated him, and I sent him off to his room. You think that that's any less emotional harm that's done than giving the child a patch? Not at all. Now, if you give a child a patch and the patch comes with an anger, it's also damaging. I'm not saying not. But what's damaging isn't the patch. What's damaging is the place where it comes from. On the other hand, when punishment is done, when discipline is done by a parent, and it's done with love, it really doesn't make a difference whether it's, sending the kid to the room, sending the kid out to the car, to the corner, grounding the kid, giving the kid a patch. Obviously, I'm not talking about a patch that actually inflicts chas v'shalom any
physical
sort of damage. I'm not talking about that. But it's the relevant question isn't what method is used. The relevant question is, what is your state of mind? And where is it coming from? Is it coming because, I can't believe my kid did this and I'm so offended and I'm so angry and where's my nachas that belongs to me and all that stuff. And then whatever method you're going to use, you're hurting your kid. You're getting 20 years from now, your kid's going to be sitting by a therapist and complaining about you. That's automatically going to happen. On the other hand, again, I'm not here advocating for patching. This is not about patching or no patching, but it's understanding the idea that a loving parent has to discipline their child. But at the same time, a loving parent only disciplines a child from a place of love. And just like a parent has to act with chesed towards a kid, there also has to be the gvura towards the kid. And as you said, chesach shiftei, the pasuk says, chesach shiftei seine b'nai.
What does that mean?
That means that you spear the rod. You hate your child. You're spoiling your child. And there's so many children today who have never been disciplined. What is also the pasuk says when you get to Avshalom? The pasuk says, "Le'atzavei aviv miyama." Right? The pasuk says that David HaMelech never disciplined Avshalom. And what happened? He was a spoiled kid who eventually ended up rebelling against the parents. You don't do your kid any favor. But at the same time, it has to be completely about the child.
But with Avshalom, David HaMelech still said, "Mi yiten moti tachtecha."
That is correct. Now, and that is very important to understand. It's a integral part of chinuch is disciplining whatever method is used. When a parent is nasty to a child, when a parent punishes a child from a place not for the good of the child, not from a place of calmness and yishuv hadas, then the parent essentially is really stepping out of the role as a parent. They're not being a parent at the moment. A father loves a kid. And if you're acting and you're doing something which is not out of a place of love, then at this moment you're neglecting your duties as a father, and as mentioned, you're inflicting damage. So the perfect father, the perfect parent is one that whatever they do for their child comes from a place of love. When they give their child a candy, it comes from a place of love. When they feel the need to punish the child, it's also coming from a place of love. However, there is a difference between the candy and the punch. And to illustrate this idea, many of you go in shul. I'm sure that many of you, the shul you go to has a candy man, right? Sasan, I have a feeling you're the candy man.
I just put in the fridge their bag of candies.
There we go. How did I guess? Okay.
Guess right.
So you're the candy man. So it's an old, long-standing meaning that a shul has a candy man. But let me ask you a question. Who's the patch man in the shul over here? Walking around giving the kids patch.
That can't be.
No, there's no patch man. Why is there no patch man? We just mentioned that in chinuch you need to give candies, you need to give patches.
The parents has to be
It's
there.
illegal, that's all.
Parents.
We're not parents.
I have no problem with another kid, another person giving. By the way, 100 years ago, there might have been people who walked around giving kids patches and shul. Baruch Hashem.
We don't have.
The one thing I could say, there is no patch man. Why is there no? There's a candy man, not a patch man. Why is there no patch man?
Because they throw them in jail.
Because I don't care if a person gives my kid a candy, but you don't touch my kid. Why shouldn't you touch my kid? Because the only way you can touch my kid, or anyone can touch my kid, is if it comes from love. And I don't trust anyone that they love my kid enough to give them a patch. I barely trust myself that I can give my kid a patch with love. I'm definitely not going to trust a person on the street. Talk about. I don't have much of an opinion about patching kids. As I mentioned earlier, if it's done right, it's nishgefarlach. You decide you don't want to patch, you want to use other forms of discipline. I'm also fine with that. I'm not hung up either way. But I don't want anyone patching my kid in school. If I found out that one of my teachers patched my kids, I would be very upset. Why? Not because I'm essentially against patching, but because I don't believe that the teacher loves my kid enough to patch my kid. Now, if there was
Did
a
it out of anger.
if there, right, yeah, I believe that he lost himself and did it out of anger, which is very damaging.
Nervous,
Now,
couldn't handle the
right, now, if-
stressed out. That's all.
exactly, stressed, which
That's
is
with the bed.
now forget about
But
no.
some of them are very
Yeah.
nervous. They
Now,
want
if
to
I
do
knew,
it
if
well.
I had an emes, Chiddush Malamed, someone I knew, a Yiras Shamayim, and loved my kid, in theory, I wouldn't have a problem if he gave my kid a punch either, because I knew that if he did, it came from a place of love. Growing up, I got punched when I was a kid by teachers. Oh, come on, anyone my age got punched, right? You didn't get punched when you were a kid. Everyone got punched, right? By parents and by teachers. That was the standard. And I must tell you, by the way, the one teacher who punched me the most when I was a kid, I have no resentment to him whatsoever. I know he loved me, and by the way, he probably did, lost himself once in a while. But at the end of the day, I knew that he loved me. That was a very important thing. On the other hand, there's another teacher that I can think of
How did you
who
know
never
that?
touched me,
Yeah.
who was absolutely emotionally abusive to me, who till this day I have a very, very big issue with him. So to make the physical into the that is the litmus test whether a person is abusive or not that's a silly thing. But at the same time, this brings out a certain point, which is to illustrate this idea. Let's say I'm a father. So within my role as a father, which is to dispense both kindness and discipline, that's my role as a father. I need to dispense both of them with love. Which one is more difficult?
Discipline.
Discipline, right?
Yeah.
But it comes, and because it's harder, it means it comes from a deeper place of love. And by the way, I can compliment anyone. I can give candy to anyone. The real desire and for the good of my kid. And I'm not looking for a smile at this moment. It's not about that. I care about him or her and about their future. That is something which is a much deeper love. Like I said, candies I can give anyone. A patch I'm going to give only to my kid. It actually comes from a deeper place. Which is why, again, I don't trust other people. Again, like I said, I barely trust myself to have that. I definitely don't trust other people to have that kind of incredibly deep love required to be able to administer discipline in a way which is proper.
Until
How would-
you can give them a punch and
I'm not getting into that debate, as I mentioned. I'm not getting into yes or no, as I explained why. Yeah.
How would the kid know that the punch came out of love if you're not, in the absence of Matthias? You have to Matthias the kid and tell him that the reason why I did this, I'm sorry, shouldn't do such and such.
Right.
Without Pius, the kid would not know it's out of love or out of anger.
Kids
or
know.
whatever.
Kids know. The kids
What?
know. The kids know.
They have a
The
feeling.
kids know.
But is it required
and most
Pius?
importantly,
Matthias?
and most importantly, it's not about what they know in the moment. It's the overall feeling they have about their chinuch and about their parents, and the kids know. But at the same time, some kids are smart and some kids aren't smart. When I say smart, I don't mean high IQ. You could have a very high IQ and be very stupid, and you could have a very low IQ. Okay, you could have a low IQ and still be smart. Talking about wise, right? But even if we're not even talking about physical hitting, we're talking about also more in a metaphorical way. So I don't have any. My youngest kid is 15, right? So the conversation about
you're not supposed to hit a kid.
so the conversation about hitting is for me is a moot
It's out of
point.
the question.
It's not right out of the question.
He might hit you
Right.
back.
But at the same time,
With force.
I do have to hit my children in a metaphorical way. In other words, sometimes you have to call them in and you have to tell them a shver of art. You have to tell them something which is difficult for them to hear, right?
Yeah.
And let me tell you something. For me to call over my kid and to say, tell him how wonderful he is and how beautiful he is and how smart he is very easy. It doesn't take a deep awakening of my love for him. It's easy. Like I said, and I can do it for any kid. But for me to muster the love, which is, because it's easier not to. It's easier to let it be. But no, if I love my kid, I can't let it be. Because I love my kid.
something dangerous, right?
Right. Because if I love my kid, I can't let him be. And I have to go and I have to call him over. But it's tough. And that requires a tremendous assertiveness of ava to do that. A tremendous assertiveness of care.
And you're left to depend on it.
Now, when you do that to the kid, and when you call over the kid, I'm talking about when it's done with love. How is the kid going to react? So the stupid kid is like, father is telling me nasty things about me. I'm going to run away. I don't want to hear this. I'm going to defend myself. I'm going to deny what my father is saying. The smart kid realizes this is not coming from a place of judgment. It's not coming from a place of... this is coming from a place of very deep love. The smart kid looks at his father face to face and realizes where it's coming from. And realizes not only is it as good as the other kindness that he gets, this is even greater love than the other kind of love. With this introduction, let's read again these few words from the Alter Rebbe, and suddenly you'll see it'll make a lot more sense. Like a compassionate father, chacham, tzaddik, wise and righteous, and all these are very necessary. The Alter Rebbe is saying we're not talking about a father who flew off the handle and is disciplined. No, we're talking about a father who's a merciful father, a wise father. Wisdom is also necessary in this case. As a tzaddik, hamakim b'nai, who disciplines this child. She'ein leben chacham lapich eiref. If the child is wise, the child doesn't, turn around, lamnus, and try to run away, limtzei le'ezra, to try to find some way of saving themselves, or yafilu me'letzisher, even someone to intercede on their behalf. L'tnei aviv, before aviv harachman v'atzadik v'chosid, before the father was compassionate and righteous and kind. Rak, rather, instead, liyisyash yachzi penemet. The wise child is the one who steers his father in the face, im aviv panim bepanim, face to face, lispel ha'ka'isa ba'ava, and accepts the discipline with love, l'tov le'kol hayom, realizing that this is something which is going to benefit him for the entire life. Hine l'mayla above b'chinas panim. What is the idea of panim? So what are we saying? We're saying that the wise child faces the father, face to face. What is the nimshalness? The mashal is we say face to face. What does it mean face to face above?
Yeah, Musar.
So the Rebbe is going to say, what is the idea upon him? They're going to remind us of stuff that we learned a long time ago. And just, by the way, just to obviously to tie up the loose strings. The Rebbe is telling Chassidim, you're coming to me, you're complaining all about your tzaras, and you want your help, and you want me to give you advice. And you need to understand where this is coming from. This is coming from Hashem. This is Hashem's love. Don't try to run away from it. Look Hashem in the face and be mekabel whatever Hashem is giving you, understanding that Hashem loves us like a father, like a wise father, like a righteous father, a kind father. And there's no reason to come to me and to start saying, I want this Eitzah or that Eitzah. That's the wrong approach. The right approach is accept. Be mekabel yisurim, be ahava, and besimcha, be accept the yisurim, understanding. This is not only Hashem's love, it's a deeper form of love. The one Hashem is giving you, revealed.
It's not easy.
It's not easy. This is very not easy. This is very deep stuff. Mm-hmm. And you can argue that this, in a way, is like almost the essence of Chassidus Chabad. Chassidus Chabad demands depth. It's not the easy way. It demands avodah. It's not about a band-aid. It's not about finding a quick solution.
Fix.
Right. It's about fundamentally understanding and addressing the issue, understanding if I'm receiving this from Hashem, it's Hashem's love. I need to make it. Yes.
What are we learning about? What's the topic?
Tanya.
Keep on listening.
Tanya. And what's the subject?
Keep on listening. Keep on listening. You'll find out. So, Alter Rebbe is going to tell us over here. What is the idea of panim el panim? This is something we've talked about on several occasions in the past. When we talk about the pnimius, what is the pnimius? In Chassidus, the word panim, the face or the pnimius, is where a person's essence is. And specifically when we're talking about the idea of there's what's called pnimius haratzon versus what's called chitzonius haratzon. Pnimius haratzon is something that you really want. You want it for its own sake. It's not a means towards an end, but you want it for its own sake. That's what you really, really desire. And then there are certain things that we do them not because we really desire to do them, but because we feel we have no other choice, or so to say, there's another ratzon over there which is behind that ratzon. So for example, when it comes along April 15th, and you pull out your checkbook and you write out a check to the IRS, so how much ratzon is in that?
No ratzon at all.
Zero.
Well, you can't say that there's no ratzon at all, because if there was no ratzon at all, you wouldn't do it.
Do that.
You wouldn't do it. But there is, so what is the real ratzon you have is that you don't want to sit in jail. The real ratzon you have is that you want to live as a free person. That's your real ratzon. That real ratzon, that's your previous ratzon. Yes, and that is yes. Why do I want to be free?
Torah Ma'asim Tovim.
No,
No.
because goyim also want to be. Why do I want to be free?
You do whatever you want.
There is no answer to that. There is no answer to that. That's previous. That's previous ratzon means there is no other behind it. For example, when you want to eat ice cream, why do I want to eat ice cream? A lot of things that we do. Why do I go to work? Because I want to make money. So I don't really want to work. I want to make the money, right? Why am I walking to the store? Because I want to buy food. I don't really want to walk to the bus. So I'd say most of the stuff that we're involved with in our life are stuff we don't want them. We want what it's going to bring for us. There's certain things that we want them itself. Why do I want to be free? Because I'm a human being. Human beings want to be free. There's no. That's not a means towards an end. That's the end in and of itself. So again, there's this Pnimi Yitzharatzon, which is what I really, really want, where my real cheshek and desire, that which I relish and want. And then there's Chitzeni Yitzharatzon. Chitzeni Yitzharatzon is something which I don't really want that, but I do it as a means towards an end. And then there's even what's called Acharayim Deratzon, sometimes I'll do even something which I really don't want to do. I have a distaste in doing it, like writing out a check to the IRS each year, but I do it. Why? Because there's a deeper reason behind it. It's a means towards an end. And the end is the Pnimi Yitzharatzon. We have this by us, because by Hashem, there's a similar thing. Hashem also has Pnimi Yitzharatzon and Chitzeni Yitzharatzon. What is Hashem's Pnimi Yitzharatzon? So for this, we need to learn only the first pasuk in the Torah. Bereshis bara elikim es hashamayim v'es haaretz. And Chazal tell us Bereshis is Beis Reshis. That means that why did Hashem create the world? Why did bara elikim es hashamayim v'es haaretz? Why did Hashem create the heavens and earth? Because of two Reshises. And what are the two Reshises? Rashi says right there, the Yidden who are called Reshis, and Torah that is called Reshis. Meaning, why did Hashem create the world? It's not that Hashem decided, I want to create a world, and then he said, what am I going to put into this world? You know what? In this world, I'll inhabit it with people, and one of the people will be Klal Yisrael. They'll be my favorites, by the way. And what am I going to do? These Klal Yisrael, they're not going to know how to behave themselves. So I'll write a Torah, and I'll give them a Torah. No. Because in that model that I just described, then what's the original desire is a world? No. There was no original desire for a world. Hashem's original desire, his real Pnimi Yitzharatzon, his desire is, he wants Yidden who are going to learn Torah and observe the mitzvahs of the Torah. In order to have that, what does Hashem have to do? He has to create a world. Hashem is not really interested in the world, he's interested in Yidden and Torah.
Didn't Hashem want to give the Torah to the whole world, all right, but the whole world wasn't, they didn't qualify
That was a ploy. That was a trick. So everything that we see around us is not what Hashem really is interested in. Not what Hashem is really interested in. As like imagine, to give an example. So imagine you find a woman who you love, and you propose, and she agrees. So you're getting married. So you're making a chasana. So you hire a hall. And you hire musicians, and a caterer, and a florist, and a photographer. And then 2 days before the wedding, Kala calls off the wedding. What are you going to do with the hall, and the musician, and the florist, and everything? Are you going to have the party anyways? Not going to have the party anyways. Why?
Cancel everything.
Because those are all Chitzeni Yitzharatzon. The Pnimi Yitzharatzon is you want to get married, and everything else is only for the purpose of the marriage. The moment that there is no marriage, all of that becomes not only unnecessary, it becomes unfortunate baggage, which you want to get rid of as soon as possible. And that's why also Chazal tell us that when Hashem created the world, Yoim HaShishi, that everything was sitting and waiting until Matan Torah. And if we would not have accepted the Torah, not that was a real possibility, but had that, theoretically, had we not accepted the Torah, the whole world would have reverted to nothingness. Why? Because of the Kabbalah said it calls off the wedding, so there's no nothing, right? Everything goes down the drain. Right? The whole purpose of the creation. So everything in creation is Chitzeni Yitzharatzon, and what is Pnimi Yitzharatzon are the Yidden. Now, It's very important to understand, which means that Klal Yisrael, whatever Hashem gives to Klal Yisrael, is Pnimiyas HaRatzon. Unlike everyone else, unlike what Hashem gives all the Goyim, which everything that Hashem gives the Goyim is Chitzoniyas HaRatzon, meaning Hashem's plan, and in order for there to be Yidden who are learning Torah and doing Torah and mitzvahs, in order for that to happen, so we need to have Goyim also. How do we know that Hashem's plan for Yidden also includes Goyim? Because
Hashem created them.
Because they exist, exactly. And
Shabbos going.
otherwise they wouldn't exist,
Yeah.
right? So they definitely have a role to play, L'Shavas Yitzhara, and to create a civilized world. But ultimately, they're not Pnimis HaRatzon, they're Chesenius HaRatzon. So everything that the Goyim receive, the parnasa, the money, the health, everything that Goyim receive, the good, the bad, and that which is in between, all comes from Hashem's Chesenius HaRatzon.
But maybe the Goyim also, when Mashiach comes, to be serving the Yidden.
That's also
It's
true.
for that.
But that's all, in other words, all for Klal Yisrael. But what Hashem gives to Klal Yisrael is Pnimiyas HaRatzon. Everything. And this means everything, which means when Hashem gives us Chesed, which was revealed, that's from Hashem's Pnimiyas HaRatzon. And when Hashem gives us that which is not so revealed, the brachas, it's also Hashem's Pnimiyas HaRatzon. It all comes from Hashem's essential love for us from a place of Pnimiyas. And that's what we're saying, that when the father disciplines the child, the father hits the child, it should be face to face. The first thing we have to know is that Hashem is facing us. Whatever we're getting from Hashem is Pnimiyas HaRatzon, is Hashem's panim. And therefore, if we are wise, how do we react to that? We direct our face, just like we said, the child faces the father face to face, panim upon him. We know that Hashem's panim is always directed towards us, even when things are difficult, even when things are painful. We know that this is Hashem's love, and it's coming from His panim. We need to react with our panim. What is our panim? We react by Hashem being our Pnimiyas HaRatzon, by Hashem being what we desire. And that's what the Rebbe is telling his Chassidim. He's saying, when Hashem is disciplining you, when Hashem is giving you the suffering, you need to react with your panim to Hashem. You need to react by intensifying your relationship with Hashem, your love for Hashem, and your desire for Hashem, because that is what the wise child does. The wise child is the one who, when the father disciplines him, he doesn't turn away his face. He faces his father and accepts it with love. We need to face Hashem with love. We need to direct our ratzon towards Hashem, just as He has directed His ratzon and His love towards us.
Rabbi, it says that כשם שמברכים על הטובה, צריך לברך על הרעה.
Yeah, you do have to tell.
It's exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
That's how it goes. Yeah.
Let's do this inside. Yes, that's what it says. Let's do this inside. V'hinei l'mayla above. What is the idea of bechinas panim? What is the idea of panim? Hashem hu haratzin v'acheshak. It's Hashem's ratzin, His will and His desire. Asher avinu shebashamayim, that our Father in heaven mashpia l'banav. Allah, He gives and to flow down to His children kol tuvelam, all the goodness of all the worlds. V'chayi nefesh v'guf, spiritual life and physical life. And Hashem gives this all the ahava, with love, v'ratzon, and desire, chasheka, chafetza, with a geshmak, ayidei, and He gives it to us ayidei teiras chayim. All of this comes to us through His Torah, the Torah of life. Shehu ritzeni yisbarach, which you know that the Torah is Hashem's ratzon. Asher nasan lanu, the Torah is Hashem's will, which He has given us, k'meisher kasav, as we say, ki be'er panecha nasat lanu, Torah is chayim chulu. Note the words be'er panecha, which means Torah also comes from Hashem's pnimius. Yeah.
Regarding the Rebbe's example, when the Kala calls off the wedding 2 days earlier, how's it Chesenius HaRatzon? Because there's no ratzon at all.
It wasn't meant to
No,
be.
because what do you mean? You had a ratzon. You had a ratzon for music. That's why you called the musicians. But it's Chesenius HaRatzon. It was a means towards an end.
I'm sorry?
You definitely wanted it. Otherwise, we don't do anything if there's no ratzon. If you called up, so the guy called up the musicians and hired them, it's because they had a desire. But it wasn't an essential desire. It was Chesenius HaRatzon. It was the Pnimiyas HaRatzon was the marriage. And the moment the Pnimiyas HaRatzon falls away, the Chesenius HaRatzon falls away. The moment there is no marriage, there's no musician. Just like if you stop getting your paycheck, you stop getting to go to work. Because the moment the Pnimiyas is gone, the Chesenius also automatically falls away.
Thank you.
No problem. Last is but it's saying Hashem gave us the Torah that we should do His will. And regarding this, it says, "Be'er pnei melech chayim." Where it's saying, the pasuk says, in the light of Hashem's. Again, note the word pnei. This is the key word over here the whole time. The pnimius. In the light of the pnimius of Hashem comes Hashem's ritzoynei, comes Hashem's will, which is Torah. As opposed to goyim mashpia chayi gufam shalei beratzon. Hashem gives them their physical life shalei beratzon v'chashecha v'chafetzon, without any real desire at all. What's interesting, by the way, to note is that you know that in Tanya, as in many other Sfarim, or almost all of the Sfarim that were published in Europe, so they had to pass through the Goyish censors. So you couldn't write anything objectionable about Goyim. And that's why wherever it says something bad about, or something negative about Goyim, or the Nochrim, or Umas Ha'olam, so always it's instead they would put in those who worship the stars, or those who worship the idols. And this way, when the censors got it, they turned to the censors and say, "Well, what are you getting offended about? It's not talking about you. You're good. You're wonderful, beautiful Christian people. We're talking about the Evdei Gelulim. This is about the idol worshippers. That's the pagans who live in India or something. It's not about you." And the censors let it through.
I mean, they were stupid, the censors.
Whatever it may be, but that's the fact. So in Tanya's, whenever you see the word Evdei Gelulim, it probably isn't really what the Alter Rebbe wrote. That's probably just a correction for the censor. If you look in the back of Tanya, there's what's called the Luach HaTikon, and over there you'll see, I'd say, a very good percentage of the Luach HaTikon is fixing up. If you turn to page 402 in your Tanya, you see 402. That's a random page of the Luach HaTikon, right? So look at the page opposite, Reish Beis, right? How many times does it say Nitfas ha'eved gelulim instead it means shebechutz la'aretz? Nitfas la'eved gelulim instead it means lu'umas, right? All these places where in Tanya it says eved gelulim, and really what it means is the Tanya that we have in front of us, which was printed, I don't know, 10 years ago probably? No, probably. This Tanya was printed, I don't know, in probably around 10 years ago. This is a new edition, new print of Tanya, and they incorporated all the corrections in the Tanya itself. So this Tanya, you don't really have to look in the Luach HaTikon because all the corrections were incorporated. But what's notable is that over here it says Lo Evdi Gelulim, and it's not corrected. Meaning that this is the original. That in this case, when Alter Rebbe is saying that Hashem gives to all the goyim without any desire whatsoever, he's not talking about all goyim. He's talking about Evdi Gelulim. He's talking about
special,
but idol worshippers. In other words, there's some goyim, the good goyim, Chassidim Masoelim, they can also, Hashem can have pleasure in giving them what they want. But Evdi Gelulim, the idol worshippers, so them taka, Hashem gives without any desire whatsoever. And l'chein nikroim elikim acherim, and that's why Avodah Zarah is called elikim acherim, which is a kind of a funny name, other gods. Why are they called other gods? Because sheyoinkim bebechinas achuraim, because they get from the achuraim of Hashem's ratzon, not the pnimius but the backside. The kachu ba'adam, and the same thing is by a person. Haratzon va'acheshek, the person is desire u'bechinas panim. That is the person's panim. If the person does not receive, is not accepting Hashem's discipline with love, v'ratzon and desire, ki'ilu hoifech oiref v'acher chatzushalem, it's as if the person is turning his neck and his back towards Hashem. So Alter Rebbe is saying over here, when we receive discipline from Hashem, we really have to just accept it and realize it is love and reciprocate with love and desire for Hashem. Now, we're not finished this piece over here, and also there's the question, the obvious question which was asked before, which is, what does this mean? After all, when we receive difficult times from Hashem, we're definitely still going and asking for a bracha from our Rebbe, and we're davening to Hashem to change it, and that we'll talk about Mir Hashem next week.
You have a rishus to change what's destined to you. If you're a choyle, you have a rishus to go to a roifer, even though maybe it was destined.
Right.
They should be sick.
We'll talk about this next week. We'll talk about this more next week. I just want to conclude with an idea which I wanted to talk about last week, but I didn't get to it last week. which is that we know last week in last week's parsha we had the Teichacha, and the Teichacha there's a story that we know the Alter Rebbe was a Balkera.
He was.
Yeah, and he would lane always. He was a tremendous Balkera.
And in fact, I remember I learned, I don't know if it was the Yom Yom, that his son, the Rebbe.
That's the story I'm about to say.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Good. Alter Rebbe was a Balkera himself, always. And one year, he wasn't at home for Shabbos Parshas Kisaveh.
Yeah.
And his son, the Mittler Rebbe, who was then a child before the age of Bar Mitzvah, so he heard Kriyas HaTorah, but he heard it from someone else. And he literally became sick from hearing the Teichacha. He was so weak afterwards that when it came Yom Kippur, they weren't sure, his father wasn't sure whether he could fast. And Yom Kippur is a few weeks afterwards. That's how negatively impacted he was by hearing the Teichacha. But they asked him, what happened? He says, every year you hear the Teichacha. And he answered, when the Tata leaned, Herzlich Nishon King Klaus. When my father reads, I don't hear any curses. My father. But suddenly this year, for the first time, he heard the kriya from someone else, and suddenly for the first time,
He filled the class.
he heard the curses, and that and
For his bar mitzvah though, right?
for his bar mitzvah, yeah.
So he didn't have to fast anyway.
And a chanami, but I guess he usually did fast, and the shiloh was whether he could, not whether he has to, but whether he could. So. I mean, this itself is very interesting because it's just the wording. Vendetata lent. This is also the idea of Rachman, like a father. When it comes from my father, I don't hear curses. Because when it comes from the father, it comes with love. When we realize that it comes from our father, there is no klolos. But what's interesting is that the halacha tells us that we read the Teichacha twice in the year. Once in Parshas Bechukosai, and once in Parshas Kisaveh. One is right before Shavuos, and one is right before Rosh Hashanah. Just that we are always mafsik. We separate 1 week. So there's always Bamidbar comes before Shavuos, and Nitzavim always comes before Rosh Hashanah. But before Shavuos we do Teichacha, and before Rosh Hashanah we do Teichacha. And why is that? Both Shavuos and Rosh Hashanah represent a tremendous gilui, tremendous revelation of Hashem's light. And in order to be able to receive that revelation, sometimes taka
Need a patch.
need a patch. We need. It takes some time. Just like we know, we needed to go through Mitzrayim, the Kur HaBarzel, the melting pot of Mitzrayim, in order to be able to be zeichet the Matan Torah. In order to get a very high gilui, sometimes we need that difficulty, and therefore it's brachas. The brachas is that it helps us to get ready for Matan Torah or for now. What's interesting is that in Bechukosai we have 49 klolos, and in Kisava we have 98, double, which tells us that the revelation, the light of Rosh Hashanah is doubly higher than the light which we have on Shavuos, which is why we need to have a double Teichacha. Why is it that the light of Rosh Hashanah is so much higher than the light of Shavuos? So the Rebbe explains, Shavuos was the Torah Hashem giving us a gift on His own, and that's beautiful and that's amazing. Rosh Hashanah is a result of our process of tshuva. Remember, the Rosh Hashanah already follows after Shavuos. We destroyed our relationship with Hashem. We made the Egel. The Luchas were destroyed. And then we had to start doing tshuva, which started the month of Elul. And Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, is already, and Sukkot, that already all is a celebration of our tshuva. And tshuva, the light is doubly higher than any light that comes from Hashem Himself, which is why the Medrash tells us that when Moshe broke the Luchas, Moshe was distressed. And when Hashem gave him the second Luchas, Hashem says, don't be distressed. He said, I want you to know that in the first Luchas you only received the Chamisha Chumashei Torah and Yeshua. But now, together with the second Luchas, you're also going to get Medrash, Halacha, Agada, and so many other parts of Torah. And the words Hashem uses, He says, it's going to be Kiflayim L'Teshia, double. Why? Because through Tshuva we get double. And that's why the Teichacha of that comes before Rosh Hashanah is double the Teichacha of before, because this is a preparation for the light which is going to come to us through Teshuvah. So understanding this, we would look at the Teichacha very differently. It's not a klolos, it's only there to purify us in order to be able to receive the brachas that come on Rosh Hashanah. And the main thing is that taka, we should see this begali. We should see taka, that we should get to the light that follows all the klolos. We've had enough of the klolos, enough of the Teichacha, And we should have all of us, the Eibishter should bench all of us with our Ksiva B'Chsima Tova,
Amen.
and Ashana Teva Mesukkah, good gebenched year in all ways,
Yeshua.
and Taka a year of only revealed brachas.
Amen.